What would you do if the person you were secretly ashamed of turned out to be the most powerful person in the room? Daniel wanted success more than anything, respect, status, and a life people would admire. But one night at a glamorous company gala, one careless lie changed everything. Trying to impress his colleagues, he introduced the woman who loved him as someone insignificant, only to watch the entire room fall silent when her true identity was revealed. In a single moment, admiration turned into embarrassment, pride turned into regret, and Daniel was forced to face a painful truth. Sometimes the greatest failure isn't losing success, it's losing the person who believed in you the most. This is a story about ego, love, humiliation, and the difficult journey of becoming better after breaking someone's trust. The ballroom glittered with gold lights and expensive smiles. Cameras flashed at the entrance as guests stepped onto the red carpet one after another. Soft music floated through the air while waiters carried trays of sparkling drinks. Daniel Cole adjusted his suit for the third time and forced a confident smile. Tonight mattered. Tonight could change his life. Beside him stood his wife, Lena, wearing a simple navy blue dress. She looked calm, almost too calm, while he checked his reflection in a glass wall. "Remember," Daniel whispered, leaning closer, "just stay relaxed and let me do the talking." Lena nodded slowly. "I always do." He hesitated before adding quietly, "And, if anyone asks, I'll introduce you differently. Just for tonight." She looked at him carefully. "Differently how?" Daniel cleared his throat. "I might say you help me manage things at home. These people are very particular." Lena's eyes did not change, but her silence grew heavier. "You mean you'll say I'm your assistant?" she asked gently. "Something like that," Daniel replied quickly. "It's not a big deal. You know how corporate people judge." She studied his face for a long moment. "If that makes you comfortable," she said softly. Relief washed over him. "Thank you. You understand me." But she didn't answer. Inside the hall, laughter echoed loudly. Executives, investors, and celebrities filled the room. Everyone looked confident, important, untouchable. Daniel immediately spotted his co-workers near the bar. "Daniel," one of them shouted. "You finally made it." Daniel walked toward them, slightly ahead of Lena. "Who's this?" a man asked, smiling politely. Daniel laughed casually. "Oh, this is Lena. She helps me keep my life organized. Honestly, I'd be lost without her." The group chuckled. "Smart man," another joked. "Everyone needs good help." Lena smiled politely, but her fingers tightened around her purse. A photographer snapped pictures nearby. Daniel straightened proudly, enjoying the attention. For the first time, he felt like he belonged among powerful people. Across the room, the company's CEO entered. Conversations softened instantly. The atmosphere changed as if authority itself had walked in. The CEO paused briefly, scanning the crowd. His eyes landed on Lena. He frowned slightly. Then he said one quiet sentence to his assistant. "Interesting, she's already here." Daniel didn't notice. But within minutes, whispers began spreading through the room like wind before a storm. And Daniel had no idea that the woman he had just reduced to help was about to become the center of the entire night and the reason his carefully built image would collapse in front of everyone. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel sat in his small apartment staring at an email on his laptop screen. He read it again. And again. Executive Leadership Gala, invitation only. His heart pounded. "They finally noticed me," he whispered. From the kitchen, Lena called out, "Dinner is ready. Are you coming?" Daniel rushed in, holding the laptop like a trophy. "Look," he said excitedly. "I got invited to the company gala." Lena wiped her hands on a towel and smiled warmly. "That's wonderful. You worked very hard for this." "It's more than wonderful," Daniel said. "This is how promotions happen. This is where important connections are made." She leaned closer to read the email. "It says partners are invited too." "Yes," Daniel said quickly. "You'll come with me." She looked surprised. "Me?" "Of course," he replied, then hesitated. "But we need to prepare carefully." They sat at the small dining table. The smell of food filled the room, but Daniel barely noticed. You know, he continued, these events are different from normal gatherings. Everyone watches how you talk, how you dress, everything. Lena nodded. I understand. You should wear something simple, he added. Nothing too noticeable. She smiled faintly. You've always liked simple. Daniel laughed nervously. It's just safer. They began eating, but Daniel kept talking about work, his boss, office politics, promotions, competition. After a while, Lena asked quietly, Are you happy there? Daniel paused. Happy isn't the point. Success is. She tilted her head. And what happens after success? He shrugged. Then people finally respect you. Her eyes softened slightly. Don't people respect you already? Daniel shook his head. Not really. They see confidence. They don't see importance yet. Later that night, Lena sat on the balcony reading a book while Daniel practiced introducing himself in different ways. Good evening, I'm Daniel Cole, Senior Project Analyst. No, he muttered, trying again. Daniel Cole, Strategic Development Team. He stopped and looked at Lena. Do I sound confident? She closed her book. You sound like someone trying very hard. That's because I have to, he said. Nobody gives you respect for free. She watched him quietly. Sometimes respect comes from how you treat people, not how important you sound. Daniel smiled dismissively. That's ideal thinking. The real world doesn't work like that. She didn't argue. She simply nodded and returned to her book. Over the next days, Daniel prepared obsessively. He bought a new suit, practiced conversations, researched executives online, and memorized industry trends. Meanwhile, Lena ironed his clothes and listened patiently as he rehearsed speeches. One evening she asked, What are you most excited about? Daniel answered immediately. Being seen. She repeated softly, almost to herself, being seen. He didn't notice the sadness hidden inside her voice. As he turned back to the mirror, adjusting his tie again, Lena watched him carefully. And in that quiet moment, she whispered words he didn't hear. One day, Daniel, you will truly see me too. Outside, the city lights flickered through the window, unaware that the invitation Daniel celebrated so proudly would soon reveal not his success, but his character. The week before the gala passed quickly, but inside Daniel, pressure kept growing. Every morning he woke up thinking about the event. Every night he imagined shaking hands with executives who could change his career. Lena noticed the change. He spoke faster, slept less, smiled only when talking about work. One evening, Daniel stood in front of the mirror adjusting his new suit while Lena folded laundry on the bed. Do you think this color makes me look senior enough? He asked. She smiled gently. You already look good, Daniel. He frowned. Good isn't enough. I need to look important. Lena paused folding the shirt. Why is that so important to you? Daniel sighed. Because people judge instantly. If you don't look successful, they treat you like you don't matter. She watched him quietly. And if someone treats you like you don't matter, does that make it true? He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up his phone and checked messages again. After a moment, he turned toward her, hesitant. Lena, we should talk about the gala. She nodded. Okay. He sat at the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. I need everything to go perfectly that night, he said. Every detail matters. I understand, she replied calmly. He rubbed his hands together nervously. So, when we get there, maybe don't talk too much unless someone speaks to you first. Lena blinked slowly. I usually don't interrupt people. I know, he said quickly. I just mean, keep things simple. She waited. Daniel continued, avoiding her eyes. And if anyone asks what you do, I'll answer for you. Her voice stayed soft. Why? Because explanations take time, he said. And these people make assumptions quickly. What kind of assumptions? She asked. Daniel hesitated before saying it. I might introduce you as my personal assistant. Just temporarily. The room became very quiet. Lena placed the folded shirt down carefully. Your assistant, she repeated. It's only for one night, Daniel rushed to explain. Once I'm established, none of this will matter. She looked at him steadily. Why can't you simply say I'm your wife? Daniel exhaled heavily. Because they'll judge us. They'll wonder about backgrounds, education, status. I can't risk looking ordinary. The word hung between them. Lena's eyes softened, but not with agreement. So, she said slowly, you're afraid I will make you look small. No. Daniel said quickly. It's not about you. It's about strategy. She gave a faint smile. Strategy. He reached for her hand. I'm doing this for our future. Once I get promoted, everything changes. She studied his face, searching, almost measuring something inside him. Finally, she nodded. If this is what you believe you need, she said quietly, I'll support you. Relief filled Daniel instantly. He smiled. Thank you. You always understand me. But Lena turned away before he could see the sadness in her eyes. Later that night, while Daniel slept peacefully, Lena sat by the window looking at the city lights. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. She whispered softly, I wonder if you would still choose this, if you knew who I really am. The room remained silent. The night of the gala arrived faster than Daniel expected. The hotel stood like a palace, glowing under hundreds of lights. Luxury cars lined the entrance while photographers called out names. Daniel stepped out of the car first, adjusting his jacket confidently. Then Lena stepped out beside him. She wore a simple but elegant dress, her hair neatly styled, her posture calm and natural. She didn't look nervous, only observant. Daniel glanced at her and nodded approvingly. Perfect. Simple and classy. She smiled faintly. I'm glad I passed inspection. He laughed, missing the meaning behind her words. Inside, the ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, reflecting light across marble floors. A live band played soft music while guests mingled in expensive suits and gowns. Daniel's confidence grew immediately. This is it, he whispered. Stay close. They walked deeper into the crowd. Almost instantly, Daniel began shaking hands. Daniel Cole, he introduced himself repeatedly. Strategic Development Team. People nodded politely. When someone asked about Lena, he smiled smoothly. This is Lena. She helps me manage my schedule and personal affairs. The man laughed. Smart move. Successful men always have strong support. Lena nodded politely. Nice to meet you. As they moved on, a woman near the bar watched Lena carefully. Have we met before? The woman asked. Lena smiled kindly. I don't think so. The woman looked puzzled, as if trying to remember something, but Daniel quickly interrupted. Excuse us, he said, guiding Lena away. See, he whispered. Too many questions already. Lena didn't reply. Across the room, several staff members greeted Lena with subtle nods of respect. One waiter even straightened immediately when she passed. Daniel didn't notice. He was busy laughing loudly with co-workers. Daniel, one colleague said. You're moving up fast. Daniel grinned. Just working hard. And your assistant, another joked. She looks more confident than you. Everyone laughed. Daniel joined them. Lena stood quietly, holding her drink, her expression calm but distant. After a while she excused herself and walked toward a mirror near the hallway. She looked at her reflection. Elegant. Composed. Invisible. Her expression slowly changed, not hurt anymore, but thoughtful. Behind her, two guests whispered. That's Daniel's assistant. She carries herself like she owns the place. Lena heard them but didn't react. At that moment, the music softened and conversations began to quiet down. The company's CEO had arrived. People turned toward the entrance instantly. Daniel straightened his shoulders, excitement rising. This is my chance, he whispered. Across the room, the CEO stepped inside, greeting guests warmly. Then his eyes landed on Lena. He stopped walking. A small smile appeared on his face, one filled with recognition. He leaned toward his assistant and spoke quietly. Prepare the announcement earlier than planned. The assistant nodded. Daniel continued talking, completely unaware that the night was no longer about his ambition. It was about to become something else entirely. Something unforgettable. The charity gala was held at the most expensive hotel in the city. Bright lights shone across the entrance, cameras flashed, and well-dressed guests walked confidently across the red carpet. Daniel adjusted his suit for the 10th time. "Do I look okay?" he asked nervously. Lena smiled gently. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue gown. Her hair was tied back neatly, and she looked calm, almost too calm. "You look fine, Daniel," she said. "Just breathe." Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Easy for you to say. These people are important." Lena didn't reply. She simply nodded. Inside the hall, music played softly while waiters moved around with drinks. Company executives laughed loudly near the stage. Daniel immediately switched into his professional voice. "Stay close," he whispered to Lena. "And remember, just smile." She looked at him carefully. "I remember." Soon, Daniel spotted his boss, Mr. Lawson, talking with senior managers. "This is my chance," Daniel muttered. He grabbed 2 drinks and handed one to Lena. "Just stand behind me." They approached the group. "Ah, Daniel," Mr. Lawson said. "You made it." "Yes, sir," Daniel said quickly. "Thank you for inviting me." Mr. Lawson glanced at Lena. "And who is this lovely lady?" Daniel hesitated for only a second, but that second changed everything. "Oh, she helps around my home," he said casually. "I brought her along to assist me tonight." Lena's fingers tightened slightly around her glass, but her face remained calm. "Oh," Mr. Lawson said politely. "That's thoughtful." One of the executives chuckled. Daniel already living like a boss. Everyone laughed. Daniel forced a smile, ignoring the quiet silence beside him. Throughout the evening, Daniel continued introducing Lena the same way. "She's just helping me tonight. She handles small things at home. She's not really part of this world." Each sentence felt heavier than the last. At one point, a young woman named Clara approached Lena near the refreshment table. "You don't look like someone's assistant," Clara said kindly. Lena smiled softly. Sometimes people see only what they expect to see. Before Clara could reply, the lights suddenly dimmed. The music stopped. A voice came through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" The CEO of the company, Mrs. Evelyn Grant, walked onto the stage. The entire hall became silent. "Tonight," she began, "we celebrate leadership, generosity, and the power of unseen contributions." Daniel clapped eagerly with everyone else. Mrs. Grant continued, "But before we begin the awards, I want to recognize someone very special, a person whose ideas helped shape this entire charity initiative." Daniel leaned toward a colleague. "Probably one of the board members." Mrs. Grant smiled warmly. "She prefers to work quietly," the CEO said. "She believes actions matter more than titles." Daniel barely listened until the next words froze him. "Lena Okoye, please join me on stage." The room filled with murmurs. Daniel blinked. "Wait, what?" Slowly, calmly, Lena placed her glass down and walked toward the stage. Every step echoed in Daniel's ears. Mrs. Grant hugged her warmly when she arrived. "This brilliant woman," the CEO announced, "is an international social impact consultant and the architect behind our community investment program. Without her, tonight would not exist." The crowd erupted into applause. Daniel felt the floor disappear beneath him. Mrs. Grant continued, "Lena has advised governments, global foundations, and corporations worldwide. Yet she chooses humility over recognition." Spotlights shone brightly as guests stared, some shocked, some impressed. Daniel remembered every word he had said earlier. "She helps around my home. She's not part of this world." His stomach turned. From the stage, Lena's eyes briefly met his. There was no anger in them. Only disappointment. Daniel stood frozen long after the applause ended. Colleagues whispered around him. "Isn't that your assistant? You didn't tell us she was famous." Daniel couldn't respond. His throat felt dry. After her speech, Lena stepped down from the stage. Many guests surrounded her, congratulating her warmly. Mrs. Grant approached Daniel. "You're lucky," she said kindly. "Lena speaks highly of your kindness." Daniel felt shame burn his face. "Yes, he whispered. Later that night, they rode home in silence. The car engine hummed softly. Daniel finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lena looked out the window. City lights reflected in her eyes. "I tried," she said gently. "Many times." Daniel frowned. "No, you didn't." She turned toward him calmly. "Do you remember our third date?" she asked. "I told you I worked in community development." Daniel searched his memory. He vaguely remembered, but he had changed the topic to talk about his promotion. "And when you asked why I traveled often," she continued, "you said long-distance work sounded boring." Daniel swallowed. He began slowly, "I thought you weren't ambitious." Lena gave a small, sad smile. "You never asked enough questions to know." The car stopped at a red light. Daniel's voice cracked. "Why did you let me embarrass you tonight?" Lena took a deep breath. "Because I wanted to understand something," she said. "What?" "Whether you loved me, or the idea of being better than someone." Her words hit harder than anger would have. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Daniel said quickly. "I know," she replied softly. "But harm does not always come from hate. Sometimes it comes from insecurity." Silence filled the car again. After a moment, she continued. "When we met, I liked how hardworking you were. You were kind to strangers. You laughed easily. But slowly, I noticed you were always comparing yourself to others." Daniel stared at his hands. "I just wanted respect," he whispered. "And you thought respect comes from standing above someone else," Lena said gently. "So you made me smaller to feel bigger." Tears filled Daniel's eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was afraid people would judge me." Lena nodded slowly. "They did judge tonight," she said. Daniel's chest tightened. "But not for the reason you feared." The car finally reached their apartment building. Before stepping out, Lena turned to him fully. "I didn't reveal myself tonight to embarrass you," she said. "Mrs. Grant planned that weeks ago. I agreed because I hoped you would see something important." "What?" Daniel asked quietly. "That dignity does not depend on status." She opened the door, then paused. "I need some space, Daniel," she added gently. "Not because I hate you, but because trust needs honesty to survive." Daniel watched her walk away toward the building entrance, each step heavy with meaning. For the first time in years, success, promotions, and approval meant nothing to him. All he could think about was one painful truth. He had been given love and nearly destroyed it with pride. And now, he didn't know if he could get it back. The apartment felt different the next morning. Quiet. Too quiet. Daniel woke up early, expecting to smell coffee from the kitchen like always. Instead, there was only silence. Lena's side of the bed was neatly arranged, untouched since she woke. He walked into the living room and saw a small note on the table. "I'm staying with my cousin for a few days. I need time to think. Lena." Daniel sat down slowly, reading the message again and again. For the first time, the reality truly hit him. She had left. Not angrily. Not dramatically. But calmly. And somehow, that hurt more. At work later that day, whispers followed him everywhere. "That's him. The guy from the Gala. I heard his girlfriend is some international consultant." Daniel kept his head down as he walked to his desk. His colleague Mark rolled his chair closer. "Man, why didn't you tell us you were dating someone that powerful?" Daniel sighed. "Because I didn't know." Mark laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when Daniel didn't smile back, his expression changed. "Wait, you're serious?" Daniel nodded. "I thought she was ordinary," he admitted quietly. Mark leaned back. "You really messed up, didn't you?" Daniel didn't answer. A message notification appeared on his phone. For a second, hope rushed through him, but it was only a company email announcing Lena as an official strategic partner for future projects. Her photo appeared at the top of the message. Confident. Elegant. Respected. The same woman he had reduced to introductions that made her small. Daniel closed his laptop slowly. That evening, he visited his older sister, Ngozi. She was the only person he trusted enough to tell the truth. She listened carefully as he explained everything, the gala, the lies, the revelation. When he finished, she shook her head. "Daniel," she said gently, "you weren't ashamed of her. You were afraid of yourself." "What do you mean?" he asked. "You believed you were not enough," she said. "So you tried to control how people saw your life." Daniel stared at the floor. "I didn't realize I was hurting her." Ngozi crossed her arms. "Intentions don't erase impact." Her words stung, but he knew she was right. "So what do I do now?" he asked. She shrugged slightly. "You grow. Not to win her back, but because you need to become better whether she returns or not." That sentence stayed with him long after he left. Days passed without messages from Lena. Daniel tried texting once. "I'm sorry. I hope you're okay." She replied hours later. "I'm fine. Thank you." Nothing more. The short reply felt like a wall between them. At night, Daniel replayed memories in his mind, moments when Lena had supported him, encouraged him, celebrated his small wins. He realized she had never once tried to make him feel inferior. The problem had never been her success. It had been his fear. Finally, he searched online for therapy sessions and booked an appointment. As he filled out the form, one question stopped him. "Why are you seeking help?" He typed slowly. "I don't want my insecurity to destroy the people I love." The therapist's office was simple and calm. Soft music played in the background. Daniel sat nervously across from Dr. Hassan, unsure where to begin. "So," the therapist said kindly, "what brings you here?" Daniel hesitated. Then the words poured out. "I hurt someone important to me," he admitted. "Not because I hated her, but because I was afraid of looking small." Dr. Hassan nodded. "Fear often disguises itself as pride." Daniel explained everything, his childhood struggles, always feeling overlooked, constantly trying to prove his worth. "When I entered the corporate world," he said, "I promised myself I would never be invisible again." "And what did visibility mean to you?" the therapist asked. "Respect. Status. Being admired." Dr. Hassan leaned forward slightly. "And where did you learn that respect comes from status?" Daniel paused. Memories surfaced, relatives praising successful cousins, teachers favoring top performers, family gatherings where achievements determined attention. "I guess. I grew up believing value had to be earned publicly," he said slowly. The therapist nodded. "So when someone close to you didn't fit the image you thought you needed, you tried to reshape reality." Daniel felt uncomfortable hearing the truth spoken so clearly. "Yes," he whispered. "Tell me," Dr. Hassan continued, "what scared you most about introducing her as your equal?" Daniel thought carefully. "That people would compare us, and see she was better." The therapist smiled gently. "And what would that have meant?" Daniel's voice dropped. "That I wasn't enough." The room became quiet. For the first time, Daniel realized the real battle had never been with society or colleagues. It had been inside him. After the session, Daniel walked through the city slowly, observing people around him, street vendors laughing, couples talking, children playing freely. None of them seemed obsessed with status. He suddenly remembered something Lena once said during a simple dinner. "Peace comes when you stop performing for the world." At the time, he had laughed it off. Now he understood. That evening, Daniel received an unexpected message. "Lena, I heard you started therapy." He stared at the screen, surprised. "Daniel." "Yes. I needed to." A few minutes passed before her reply came. "I'm glad you're trying." His heart beat faster. "Can we talk?" he typed. This time, the reply took longer. "Finally." "Not yet. Healing takes time." Daniel exhaled slowly. Though it wasn't the answer he wanted, it wasn't rejection either. It was honesty. And for the first time, he realized something important. Winning her back was no longer his only goal. Becoming someone worthy of trust, for himself and others, mattered more. He looked up at the evening sky, feeling both regret and hope. The journey ahead would not be easy. But for the first time, Daniel was no longer running from who he was. He was finally learning to face it. 3 months passed. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm for Daniel. Therapy became part of his weekly routine. At first, he attended because he wanted to fix what he broke with Lena. But over time, something changed. He began going for himself. He learned to pause before speaking. He listened more. He stopped measuring his worth against other people's success. At work, his behavior also changed. Instead of competing for attention during meetings, he started supporting his teammates' ideas. One afternoon, his manager announced a new project. "We'll be working closely with an external consulting partner," Mr. Lawson said. "They'll guide our community expansion strategy." Daniel barely paid attention until the next sentence. "The lead consultant is Lena Okoye." The room buzzed with excitement. Daniel's heart skipped. He hadn't seen her since the night she left the apartment. The following Monday, the conference room filled with executives and staff members. Daniel sat quietly near the back, unsure how to act. Then the door opened. Lena walked in. She looked confident and composed, dressed in a simple cream-colored suit. Conversations softened as people turned toward her. She greeted everyone professionally. When her eyes reached Daniel, she paused briefly, then gave a small, polite nod before continuing. No anger. No warmth. Just professionalism. And somehow, that hurt more. During the presentation, Lena spoke clearly about community investment plans and ethical leadership. Daniel listened carefully, noticing details he had ignored before: her intelligence, patience, and ability to make complex ideas easy to understand. After the meeting, employees gathered around her with questions. Daniel waited until the room emptied. Finally, they stood alone. "Hello, Daniel," she said calmly. "Hi, Lena." An awkward silence followed. "You've been doing well," he said. "Your presentation was amazing." "Thank you," she replied politely. He shifted nervously. "I didn't know you'd be working with us." "I accepted the project recently," she said. "It felt important." Daniel nodded. "I understand." He wanted to say more, but words failed him. Lena studied him quietly. "You look different." Daniel gave a small smile. "Therapy does that, apparently." She almost smiled, almost. "That's good," she said. He took a deep breath. "I'm not expecting anything from you. I just want you to know. I'm trying to become better. Not to impress you. Just to stop hurting people." Lena's expression softened slightly. "Change takes consistency," she said gently. "Not moments." "I know," he replied. "I'm learning that." Before leaving, she added, "We'll be working together professionally. I hope we can do that respectfully." Daniel nodded. "Of course." As she walked away, he felt something unfamiliar: not desperation, but acceptance. He understood now that rebuilding trust wasn't about grand apologies. It was about quiet, repeated actions. Weeks into the project, Daniel focused on teamwork rather than recognition. During meetings, he credited others openly and admitted mistakes without defensiveness. One afternoon, a junior employee named Tunde presented an idea but struggled to explain it clearly. Some executives looked impatient. Old Daniel might have taken over the moment to look smart. Instead, he said, "I think Tunde's idea is strong. Maybe we can help structure it together." He helped refine the presentation without stealing credit. Lena observed silently from across the table. Later, she approached him. "That was kind," she said. Daniel shrugged lightly. "Just trying to be a decent human." She studied him carefully, as if searching for signs of performance. But there was none. Only sincerity. For the first time since the gala, she felt something shift. Maybe change was possible. The final project presentation arrived faster than expected. Executives, investors, and community leaders gathered to hear the results of months of work. Daniel felt nervous, but not for approval this time. He simply wanted the work to succeed. Lena opened the presentation, then surprised everyone by inviting Daniel to present the next section. He stood, slightly startled, but continued confidently. Instead of focusing on achievements, he spoke about collaboration. This project worked, he said, because people listened to one another. Real progress happens when no one needs to feel bigger than someone else. As he spoke, he noticed Lena watching him not as a stranger, but as someone reconsidering what she once knew. The presentation ended with loud applause. Mr. Lawson shook Daniel's hand. "Excellent leadership today." Daniel smiled politely but didn't let the praise consume him. He had learned something important. Recognition felt better when it wasn't desperately needed. Later that evening, as guests left the building, Lena approached him outside. "Walk with me," she asked. They strolled slowly along the quiet street. "I've been observing you," she said after a while. Daniel laughed softly. "That sounds intimidating." She smiled slightly. "I needed to see if the change was real." "And?" he asked carefully. She stopped walking. "You're different," she admitted. "You listen more. You don't try to control how people see you." Daniel nodded. "I realized something in therapy. I spent my life trying to earn worth instead of believing I already had it." Lena's eyes softened. "That realization changes people," she said. He hesitated before speaking again. "I don't expect us to go back to how things were. I just hope someday you can trust me again, even if only as a friend." She looked at him for a long moment. "Trust grows slowly," she said. "Like healing." Daniel nodded. "I understand." They continued walking. After a few steps, she said quietly, "When I left, I thought distance would give me clarity. It did. I realized I still care about you, but I needed to see growth, not promises." Daniel's heart beat faster, but he stayed calm. "I'm still growing," he said honestly. "That's all anyone can do," she replied. They reached a small cafe at the corner. Warm lights glowed through the windows. Lena turned toward him. "Would you like to start again?" she asked gently. Slowly. Without pretending. Without roles. Daniel smiled, not with excitement alone, but with gratitude. "I'd like that very much." They entered the cafe together, not as people trying to impress the world, but as two individuals learning how to meet each other honestly. Outside, the city moved as always, busy, loud, indifferent. But inside, something quieter and stronger began to grow. Not perfection. Not status. But respect, humility, and a love built on truth rather than appearance. And this time, Daniel understood. Real strength was not being seen as important. It was learning how to value people, including himself, without comparison. If this story touched you, taught you something, or made you see relationships differently, don't just scroll away, be part of the conversation. Right pointing backhand index, drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done if you were in Daniel's position? Thumbs up sign like this video to help more people discover stories that inspire growth and real change. Bell subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next powerful story, because every day, we bring you drama, lessons, and stories that stay with you long after the video ends. And remember, sometimes the biggest glow up isn't success, it's becoming a better person. See you in the next story.